Robert and the Attack of the Giant Tarantula. Chapter 3. Fuzzy. "What is it?" asked Robert. He tried to stay cool. "It's a tarantula," said Suzanne Lee. "Her name is Fuzzy." "Fuzzy?" "Yes, she has 8 adorable fuzzy legs. See?" Robert didn't think adorable was the right word. Tarantula legs were definitely not adorable. "Are you going away?" he asked. "No," said Suzanne Lee. "My cat Fluffy is jealous. I'm afraid he'll hurt Fuzzy if I keep her." How could a monster spider and a killer cat have names like Fuzzy and Fluffy? "For how long?" asked Robert. Forever?" said Suzanne Lee. Robert opened his mouth, but nothing came out. "Please," she smiled sweetly. "Don't be afraid, Robert. She won't hurt you if you are gentle." Robert swallowed. I have to ask my father." Robert left Suzanne Lee standing in the doorway while he went to ask his father if he could keep a tarantula in the house. Of course he would say no. Then that would be that. Pets were messy. Robert's dad hated any kind of mess. He was so neat and fussy that he turned all the cans in the cupboard face out so he could read the labels. "Sure," said Mr. Dorfman when Robert explained about Fuzzy. "Huh?" Robert couldn't believe it. "You've always wanted a pet," said his dad. "This is a good way for you to have one. It's small enough to keep in your room, and I'm sure you will keep its tank clean." "Great," said Suzanne Lee when Robert told her. "Here's $10 from my birthday money. It's all I have." Then she handed him the tank. Robert stared at Fuzzy. Her beady eyes stared back at him. She moved her big hairy legs, and Robert felt his skin prickle. "Feed her once a day. Here's some food." Suzanne Lee held out a box, and Robert took it. He didn't ask what was in it. It was bad enough knowing he had to sleep in the same room as a tarantula. Chapter 4. The Attack of the Giant Tarantula. That night, Robert could not sleep. Noises came from the tank on his bookcase. He was sure Fuzzy was trying to get out. He lay there, stiff as a mummy, waiting for the scratching to stop. Robert was so tired in school the next day that he jumped when Mrs. Berthold called on him. He missed 2 easy spelling words on a test and lost his place when they were reading aloud. "Wake up, Robert. We're on page 4, said Mrs. Berthold. The next night was even worse. Robert wrapped the covers around him so tightly he couldn't move his arms and legs. Scratch, scratch. Robert tried to ignore the sound. He imagined Fuzzy growing into a huge monster, a giant tarantula. She burst out of her tank and jumped onto his bed. Chomp, chomp. She chewed through the blankets. Soon she would nibble his toes. Robert tried to swat Fuzzy, but something held his arms down. He leapt out of bed, tangled in the covers. Crash! He knocked over Fuzzy's tank. Charlie ran in and flipped on the light. "Hey, little bro, what's up?" "A giant tarantula is loose!" Robert screamed. He leaped back onto his bed, leaving his covers behind. "Giant tarantula?" said Charlie. "You mean your itty-bitty spider?" Charlie checked under the bed. He looked in Robert's closet. "There's nothing here," he reported. "Did you check your bed?" Robert flew off the bed. His bare feet hit the cold floor. He prayed he would not step on anything that moved. Robert's mom and dad came into his room. "What's going on?" asked Mr. Dorfman. Robert was so scared he couldn't talk. All of a sudden, Charlie burst out laughing. "What's so funny?" asked Robert. Charlie pointed to the corner of the room. "There's your giant tarantula." There was Fuzzy, fast asleep in Robert's slipper.